Welcome to Small Biz Life, episode 109, The Truth About Working with Your Significant Other.
Does this sound familiar?
Oh my God, I have so much to do today.
Don't forget to breathe.
But I have almost 400 emails in my inbox and 30 phone calls to make.
Have you looked into getting a virtual assistant yet?
Oh, and I need to schedule all my social media posts.
Did you drink anything today?
I had coffee.
Did you eat today?
Did I mention coffee's a bean?
This is Small Biz Life.
Hey guys, welcome to this week's episode of Small Biz Life. We're so excited that you are with us again this week. My name is Kristin Ingram.
And I'm Jeffrey W. Ingram.
I am a CPA and Jeff is an IT wizard. And we not only own a business together, but we work with small business owners. We have over 30 years of combined experience, helping small business owners just like you cut all the crap out of, the daily part of their business so that they can focus on the stuff that they love to do and the stuff that's important. And so this is kind of one of those topics that I work with a lot of clients on how to better work with their spouses and how to, make this thing work.
Yeah, I think a lot of people who don't know us are even unsure if we actually get along like we do on the show. And it's probably better actually off the show. On the show, I'm a little bit more serious. Kristen's a little bit more serious. We're not joking around quite as much. But we genuinely do get along with each other. And that's one of the reasons why this works.
Yeah, and, we call this episode The Truth About Working with Your Significant Other because the truth is, if you don't have a strong foundation outside the business, if you don't like each other, you don't get along outside the business, it's not going to work.
Yeah. And I mean, the thing is, if it's not solid, all of the cracks and fissures will magnify when you're in a business relationship together.
I think it's a really good point, and I was going to kind of say something like that I think having a business together magnifies whatever the core of your relationship is. Yeah. And so it's kind of funny. We were doing like a Facebook Live for our paid membership. And one of our members was like, power couple, because I was like over Jeff's shoulder while he was recording. And it's like, and that's kind of our thing is like, I mean, we really are this like really supportive, have fun, best friend sort of, marriage.
Yeah.
And so I think that shows in our podcast, in our products, in everything that we do.
Yeah. I mean, essentially the way we strategize at this, our approach to the way we deal things is even if we're right, we are a team together. It is us versus the world. We're about to have a kid. It'll be us versus the kid. It'll be us versus the neighbors. It's us versus the town.
And the kitties.
And definitely versus the kitties. It's like, we are a team and we are finding things together. Even when we sometimes aren't sure if the other person's sane in the arrangement, which is usually Kristin, not sure about me. But, we stick together first. We make discussions, but when we're out, when people interact with our public face, it's typically a unified front because, we're going to support each other. And then if we're unsure, we might go back later and like, what did you really mean by that? I'm not sure. I know what you're talking about.
Well, it was funny because like last night we were at this like, it's a pre-childbirth class, I guess. They call it like prepared childbirth. I still don't feel any more prepared, but that's okay.
I call it ill-prepared childbirth.
Right. So they had us do this thing where they had the guys, we were talking about pain management, and they had all the guys get up and, okay, if you knew your wife was going to want pain medication, stand over here. And if you knew that they definitely didn't want it, stand over there. And then if you weren't sure, if you thought she wasn't sure, stand in the middle.
You're supposed to make the prediction of what your significant other was going to choose.
But like the whole thing was, it was about like communication, right? And whether or not you were having these conversations. And it was kind of funny because Jeffrey chose correctly. And I was like, yay, and I thought it was kind of funny because like we were the only couple in the yes column. Like, yes, there will be drugs.
Most were the unsure.
Right. Most were like, I don't know. And I think a lot of them were kind of amazed that we were so sure about that. But this is something like we've had conversations about. We've had conversations about a lot of aspects of how, raising a child is going to work. And it's funny because we do that in our life. We also do that in our business. Yeah. What's the business going to look like? What products are we going to put out? When are we going to go live? When are we going to, when are things going to happen? How are they going to happen? And we have those discussions together.
Yeah. Because I think fundamentally there are three important things that you need to work together. Because I think you need this as just a spouse. What we've been saying, you need as a spouse. To enjoy your life together, because you're going to spend a lot of time together or around each other. Might as well work together because it'll make your life better. But when it comes to taking that next step into business, there are some things that need to be sort of there up front, outside of the willingness to support each other. And that is what I like to call the 3 R's. You need respect, roles, and responsibilities within the business and life. And one of the roles both of you will have is that life and business are 2 different things.
No, and I like how you said that's life as well, because I think that's one thing that we're really good at, and we're really good at shifting. Like, so since I've become pregnant and, I'm gestating, that is one of my responsibilities and roles right now, is to make sure that I'm properly gestating. Jeff has taken on a lot more of the, cleaning up around the house, making sure that chores are getting done. I'm managing the finances. When we cook, I cook. But it's like, you've always been really good. When I'm really busy, during tax season or this, that the roles kind of change. And that's one thing I think that we think either in business or in life that roles are static. Yeah. And they're not.
No, because life's not static. What happens day to day is never to plan. Even if it's a good plan, a good plan means maybe it's not even about how much of it's on plan. It's about how you react to the stuff that's off plan that typically makes a plan work or not.
So, I think respect is kind of one of those things that it's hard to define what respect looks like, but I definitely know it when it's not there.
Yeah, and it's definitely something that's, the spouses need to believe that they respect their spouse, and their spouse needs to believe that they're respected. And that's where I think it's going to have a different definition from husband to wife, from couple to couple, but it needs to be there or it's not going to work.
Right. And there are some things that I know respect is not. Like swearing at each other, yelling at each other, putting each other down, is not respect. No. Not respecting your significant other's opinions is, not respect.
Well, especially too, that's where, roles are important, because typically you're not going to be doing the exact same thing in a job. Even if you're working very similar types of things, there are going to be different roles that fall onto people depending on who's actually running the business, who's taking more of that responsibility on, who's delivering more of the line work. A lot of times there's a split there, or at least there has to be at some point. And when someone's, job in the business is something, you got to respect them at doing that.
Right. And I think, a lot of times when I'm seeing roles in businesses, it is typically, this is not always the case, but typically the woman is like the administrator, bookkeeper, financial person, answers the phones, kind of runs the back end of the business. And then the man runs the line work, kind of front end of the business.
Yep.
And I think that it's important that even when you've defined those roles, you need to think about, okay, if I were in this role for another company, right? Not my own company, not my spouse's business or our business or whatever. When I see things happening, like I think that we're spending too much money in an area, or I think we need to raise our prices because our costs have gone up. If you worked for somebody else, would you say something? Yeah. And typically the answer is yes, right? Because you're the financial person, you're running the numbers. I see a lot of times in husband and wife businesses and in significant other businesses where the bookkeeper won't do that, where the spouse won't do that because she doesn't want to cause a fight. She doesn't want to cause ripple. And I think that when you have those roles, it's not just knowing your roles, but it's embracing that role and live, and really being in that role. Because I think a lot of times as business owners, we don't do that.
Yeah. And I think too, especially if there isn't a formalized business, like we have Ingram Digital Media, which is a formalized business. We have formalized roles within the business. All businesses aren't set up that way. And heck, it might even be a sole proprietorship. And technically, you're maybe not even on the payroll. You're maybe doing a responsibility for the business, but you're not technically via the paperwork part of the business. If you're working for the business, whether or not you're getting paid or you're receiving benefits, when it's your family business and you're involved at all, you got to act like an owner. And yes, you're not going out there and doing the work, but the person going out doing the work probably has no idea what the financial situation is. And a lot of times in those scenarios, they have no clue.
Now, let me flip that a little bit. If you are a sole proprietorship and you really want to run like a sole proprietorship and you don't want your spouse involved and you don't want your spouse to give you feedback, don't drag your spouse into the business.
Yes, don't give them roles and responsibilities.
Okay, and I think sometimes sole proprietors get frustrated because they're like, well, I don't really want you to be part of the business. Oh, wait, can you do my bookkeeping
XYZ,
for me? Yeah. Can you do this task for me? And then when that spouse wants to give feedback, the owner's like, well, this is my business. So that you can't have it both ways, right? Yes. They're either in or they're out. And you have to come together and you have to make that decision. Now, one thing, Jeff doesn't own any of the CPA firm, but he does help me out and he does give me feedback, and I'm pretty open to that because I'm like, you're helping me out. If you see something I'm doing that could be more efficient, that could be done better, please let me know.
Yes.
But I can't ask him to help me during busy season and then be like, hey, it's my business.
That's right.
Okay. You can't do that. Doesn't work that way. Yeah. Okay. So, kind of keep that in mind because I know I've talked to small business owners and they're frustrated because their spouse wants to tell them, things they should do. When they don't work for the business, but yet you ask them to do stuff for the business all the time. Okay. So you got to make sure that that's,
yes.
You have one or the other. You can't have both.
And when you have these roles within there, it needs to be understood that, the person who has role XYZ has a little bit more say there, even if structurally they might not. They need to be given that respect because they're part of the business. And so, like if someone's taking care of the bookkeeping and they're telling you your expenses are too high, you got to listen.
Yeah. And then, if you know your role, you also have to know what your responsibilities are. And I think sometimes, like I'm CEO of Ingram Digital Media. Well, what does that mean? What responsibilities do I have within that? And, just giving yourself a title is not enough. And you've got to sit down. Like, Jeff handles pretty much all the IT stuff. That is his job. I like not having that job. It's fantastic. And typically with IT stuff, I kind of let you do your thing as long as you don't want to spend a ton of money, And that's the thing. It's like, so you kind of have to know, like, all right, so where, we even kind of have some way, like, at what point can you make decisions without consulting me? Is it a dollar value? Is it an impact thing? And have that agree to what that is.
Yeah. Especially too, you have to respect the roles within that. If someone is doing, and I keep going back to bookkeeping, I hate doing that, but it's the easy one because it's typically a role, because it's typically a bit to it. But if someone's doing the bookkeeping and you're the owner of the sole proprietorship, you can't go, well, I'm going to switch from this to this accounting software because it's just going to save me $10 a month, or it's going to save me money over time if I do this from a cost of the product standpoint. If the other person's doing the work, they need influence on the decision. They need to know it's coming. And sometimes you'll find out even if something has a lower dollar cost because of the time to train, the time to get back into something. It might not be worth upgrading unless you can absorb the additional training in the short term.
Right. So, but if Jeff came to me and said, and we did this recently, he's like, I think we should change from Edgar to Recur Post. Mm-hmm. And we looked at it together, and it was like the same amount of money, and I value that he said, I think this will be better. He's the IT guy.
Yep.
Okay, cool. So, I think when you kind of have those defined responsibilities, the other thing that's really important is that you have to make sure that sometimes you need to seek permission to say, can I help you with this? Because this really needs to get done and it looks like you need some help.
Yeah.
So, because the goal of this is not to say, well, you missed the deadline, you failed, you're hurting our business. The goal is to say, can I help you so we can get this done on time?
Yeah. And I do think, being supportive, that's one of the key components of it succeeding and going. Every business has a rhythm where sometimes certain roles have a lot more work than the other roles. And even the reason you don't do those roles is probably because you don't like them, or the other person's better at them. There are reasons why the roles typically fall out the way they do. But be supportive if they're being pushed really hard, try and help alleviate that, because then that will leave them to support you in other ways going forward in the business. So, and that's why the mutual respect is so important. The mutual desire for support is so important. If you don't have those things, it becomes really hard to do this.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And it's like I see in so many businesses where it almost seems like one of the significant others is trying to set up the other one for failure. Mm-hmm. Whether it's, to cause a fight or whether put the other person down. We started this episode talking about how we are a team. Mm-hmm. And so, Jeff will pick up things for me when they need to get done. I will pick up things for him when they need to get done. It's not like a competition to see who can get the most done or who has the most responsibilities. It's about getting things done so we can get out of the business and go do something else,
yes.
And, I think that it's really important that you've got to create a separation between your personal life and your business.
Yeah. And I think that is so important, and just the idea that when you're at work, you're doing work stuff. It's in a certain space that you're working. You might not even have a space together. It could be two different spaces. You definitely do not want to share a desk. You do not want to go there.
No.
You at least need separate desks. You might need separate rooms. It just depends on how each of you work. That's not something that I can tell you. That's a relationship thing, but those spaces both need to be workspaces. Wherever the people are working need to be workspaces. And now it's about doing work in those spaces. So you're not talking about your mom or the kids or school or what's for dinner tonight. Those aren't work discussions. And sure, maybe during your Pomodoro breaks, you talk about that stuff. That's fine. But it's like, would you want your employee doing all of this stuff on their work time? If not, you shouldn't be doing it.
Mm-hmm. And it's kind of funny too, because I notice when we're when we're having like a really good Pomodoro day, it's like we both leave the office, because we're on the same timers. We'll both leave the office. We'll kind of talk about some home stuff. We'll get some home stuff done. And then when it's time to go back, we go back in the office and it's like, okay, we're working again. And I think that works incredibly well, and, we've talked about like mindset stuff about how you have to have a space. It creates triggers in your brain to work. You don't want to work from the couch.
If it doesn't, you need to develop triggers for those spaces.
But, it's like we have two distinct workspaces in our house. We have one office that we work out of, and we both have desks in there. We don't face each other. We're kind of facing different directions. But it's easy enough for us to collaborate if we need to.
Yes, and you are right, Kristin. Put me in the corner. I have to look at the corner all day.
But you're close to the fireplace.
Yes, I am.
So that's kind of nice.
Put wood in there for you.
Exactly. See, I think about these things. I do have a bigger desk because I'm the CEO. I like that. That's great. And then we have the recording studio upstairs where, that's where we record the podcast. This is typically where I am when we do like live videos for HQ. We record all our HQ content up here, and worst case, it's like if I need to record something, say I'm doing videos for Accounting and Focus or for school or whatever, I can come up here and do that. And we both have laptops so that we're mobile around the house.
Yes.
And I think it's worked out really well.
Yep. No, it definitely has. It allows us to move upstairs or downstairs. If we need a little more quiet time, we can separate more if we need to. There's also a desk, which we haven't used in a long time, in the studio as well, too. But there is one up there. Or you can sit at the table we record at and use that as a desk if you wanted to. But yeah, we use the spaces well. We try and keep them for what they're for. Sometimes I'll record upstairs. Sometimes I'll record downstairs if Kristin's not around. So that will kind of vary a bit. It depends on what the kind of recording I'm doing. Like I might do a live from my desk downstairs, where she typically does not do that. Sometimes we'll both go outside if it's one of those days where you're kind of lagging on energy. It's good to kind of get up and move. But, it's very important about respecting that and going, oh, Kristin's alive. I probably shouldn't go up and interrupt her and ask her a question about, is she making me dinner tonight?
Well, and that's kind of the nice thing is even though we share a space, we have another space to go. So even like if we have a conference call or something, we can go to another space to do that.
That, or if I'm gone and I come home and she's been home for hours, I try the best because I'm probably the most likely one to break this one is I don't come in really loud and being obnoxious and, teasing or something because I don't know who she's talking to or what she's doing.
Well, and I'm pretty bad about that too. Like I come home and I'm like, oh my God, I got to talk to you. I missed you. That's one of the bad things about having a really good relationship is you're like, hi, can I interrupt you? Hi, I want to talk to you. Hi, can I? Yeah. So sometimes that hurts our productivity a little bit.
And the thing I understand is we're giving you all these things to do, and we're not saying you're going to be perfect at these all the time. And I think that's one of the mistakes people make is, we're just not good enough here to do stuff. It's about the preponderance of the time. It's about the majority of the time. If you are good at doing these things, no one's perfect at anything, I have as many bad days as I have good days in Pomodoro at this point, where I forget to press the start. And then typically if I forget to do it in the morning, I kind of forget it all day.
Yeah.
So,
but it's funny. We're better for both working in the office together.
Yes.
Because hopefully one of us will remember, but that's, and that's the key is like, I think everybody thinks that like, it's got to be perfect all the time.
Yeah. And I think
it's not true.
As employers we've had and as employees we've been annoyed with, where, it's not about perfection at work. It's not about perfection and the way you're getting stuff done. It's about holding each other accountable, which means when there's a shortcoming, figuring out what went wrong and what are ways to improve it. Is it just a one-off? Those happen. Things go sideways on a one-off reason all of the time. And that's okay. But if it's not a one-off, if there's something that needs to be fixed, what can you do together to make the business that's feeding your family work better?
Yeah. And it's really important to make sure that, you have a common direction, you have a plan, you have shared goals, you talk to each other about what those goals are, and you have to stop working at some point during the day. And I think we've kind of talked about this in the context of, you working on your own, but we haven't really talked about it in the context of as a couple.
Yeah. When it's like, it's easier to have a trigger releasing of work when you come home. And if you have trouble letting go of work, you need to take a moment, release your work, come up with triggers to tell yourself, okay, I'm walking, into this room. I'm no longer at work. And that's the reason why the separate spaces are so important. And you both need to respect them, and you both need to work together on those.
But that's the thing is if you're constantly working, if you're constantly talking about work,
your business partners.
Right. And that's the thing. And you stop being, significant others. You stop being spouses. You stop being, it's not a good place to be mentally, physically, it's not good for your relationship.
Well, I think it's one of the things, and we talked about this very early on. I was a bit older when we got married, and
you're a dirty old man.
But I remember telling you when we first got together, and this is when we were young, we were assuming we were going to have kids probably in 5 years, and we neither wanted any idea what was in store for us in life at that point. And I said, we have to always be husband and wife first. When we become parents, it's not mom and dad, it's husband and wife. We're mom and dad with the kids.
Yep.
Or in this case, for us, it'll be a kid. It's not business partners first. It's husband and wife first. But you know what? To do that, when we're at work, we have to become workers, owners in our business. But still, ultimately, we're husband and wife first, and we're ultimately fighting for the same goals. And it's really important too, besides the respect, besides the support, is your goals need to be moving in the same direction. They don't necessarily need to be exactly the same thing, but they need to be in the same direction.
All right. Well, and it's funny because, I think one of the reasons that we came up with Dreamcatcher was because we had talked to so many couples that when you said okay, what do you want to do when you retire? What are your big goals? What are your big dreams? And a lot of couples didn't have them at all, or they each had their own and had never told the other person, and I mean, I've worked with clients where one of them wants to live in a hot climate, the other one wants to live in a cold climate. And it's now they're getting ready to retire, and they're screaming at each other over this. And because they both kind of had this dream in their head for the last 30 years that they're moving towards, but didn't tell their spouse. And so I think it's critically important that if you have a big goal, a big dream, I keep telling Jeff, I'm at some point I'm going to get a degree where somebody can call me doctor. And I think I've been saying this for 20 years. I haven't done it yet. But I kind of throw it out there. Jeff knows at some point I might go, babe, I'm ready to go get my, go get my PhD, but it's something that, we've kind of always talked about, Jeff wants to move somewhere really warm and tropical, it's a thing. And I'm yes, we should totally go do that. But it's sometimes you have these discussions with people and the spouse is shocked that these are the dreams, that their spouse has. And I'm just wondering, have you ever had that conversation with your significant other? These are my goals in life. These are my dreams in life. Are you sharing those with each other?
And, they don't have to be the same, but they have to be compatible. Or I'm willing to not worry so much about this, but, this has to be, you need a common vision for the family and for the business, how those two play into each other. You need commonality, it's sort of like a balanced scorecard for your family, where the energy of the family, the energy of the business are all moving everyone in the family unit towards that destination.
Right. Because I think that's why I see a lot of like unhappiness and discontentment. Especially as like people, if you have kids, when your kids become like teenagers or they get ready to leave the house, and all of a sudden the couple will go, we have nothing in common anymore. Like our kids are gone. And I'm even seeing this with business owners. We've grown this business together, but now the kids are gone. We don't really have anything in common. Like, what do we do? You know, and it frightens me that I'm talking to people like in their 50s that like they look at their significant other and they don't know them, you know? And I think it's years. And I especially see this in businesses where they are so focused on growing their business, you know, and then they get so focused on raising their kids and growing their business that like the kids are gone, business is going well. And they're like, well, crap, I don't even know who the hell you are anymore.
You know, or I know the ones that saddens me is, you know, and I've seen this where someone will be talking about how they feel their spouse is undermining and does not respect their goals, which is a horrible thing. And then they'll talk about their spouse's goals with disdain and like they're an idiot for having their goals. And like, I don't know about your spouse, but I mean, it sounds like you both maybe have that problem. I don't know.
Yeah.
You know, and the thing is, you know, it's like I have no desire for a PhD, but I can respect Kristen's desire to do it. And it doesn't really affect me personally one way or the other if she ever gets one, except for the fact that, you know, it's one of her dreams that will make her happy. So that would, you know, maybe in net raise the happiness quotient in the house. If that, I don't know, but it doesn't hurt me. So just because I don't care about PhDs, what does that have to do with anything?
Right. And I think, you know, one thing that really helps, you know, especially, you know, to avoid that, you know, getting into your 50s and your kids are gone, you go, oh my God, I don't even know who you are, is, you know, you've got to have time where just the two of you hang out, where just the two of you, you know, go on dates.
As husband and wife. Not business meetings, not, okay, we're going to go eat a meal. Like, or time together at the park pushing the kid. No, that's not time as husband and wife.
Right. And I think way too many couples forget about how important it is to have that time as just, you know, spouse or significant other or whatever it may be. I think that is critically important. You know, I mean, even like when you go out to dinner and it's just you and your significant other, put away your phones, you know, and talk to each other. Not about business
or have
stuff.
Those moments that it's okay. Like, okay, while we're waiting at this point, it's fine. But, you know, when the food comes, we're talking. Or maybe it's before the food's coming, we're talking. Whatever it is, have a system.
You know, like sometimes, like, you know, like we'll be kind of scrolling through because, you know, like we'll go, oh, what's going on in the state? Because Jeff and I are both like really into politics and current events and the stock market and finance and, you know, so it's like, okay, oh, wait, look, this is going on. Let's talk about this. And, you know, and sometimes it'll spur discussion, but then we put down our phones and we have a discussion, you know? And so I think if your date night consists of going out to eat and not talking to each other, you know, that's not really date night.
And you know, if work comes up and you talk about a big project that's coming down for a few minutes, there's nothing wrong with that either. But it can't dominate and it can't be a business meeting.
Yeah. And that's, you know, I think that's one thing that I see in a lot of couples who are really frustrated with working together. They never stop working.
Now, I do think there's the one big thing that most couples struggle at, most people struggle at, and that's this idea of conflict resolution. And it's kind of counterintuitive. And, you know, this is not an episode about how to do conflict resolution, but the idea is you both need to be versed in this. You know, because usually there's a spouse that's, you know, if you looked at it from the outside, you'd think was in charge. Whether or not that's completely true or not is irrelevant. But when you're in business together, there has to be times where both parties are holding each other accountable, or they're the one being the bad guy, you know, quote unquote bad guy. So, you know, they're the, you know, so you both need to be good at conflict resolution. You know, and you know the simple way I like to think about it is you need to, you know, you think, you plan, and you act. That's the very simple basis of, kind of the strategy for conflict resolution. But you both need to do that, and then, individually, and then as a business be able to go, okay, this is the way the business needs to act.
Right. And that's the thing is, kind of, it's funny because like before we started recording, we were kind of thinking like, all right, if we had to talk about like how we make decisions in the business, like what does that look like? And I think a lot of times what we do is if it is something that is more in Jeff's wheelhouse, then we pretty much defer to Jeff. If it's something that's more in my wheelhouse, we defer to what I think, unless it's something that the person is ridiculously passionate about. And so Jeff and I have kind of had this before where, we're either like going over a show or we're going over, curriculum for a course. And, typically like a lot of times like content stuff, since I'm like, I do curriculum kind of for a living, then curriculum stuff a lot of times like defers to me, even if you put it together. But like, I remember we've had conversation where like, no, this has to be in there. Like, this is important. It has to be in there. We have to talk about this. And I'll go, okay. Because I respect you enough to know that like, if you're going to put your foot down and say, this is something I really believe in, then it is important to you.
And a lot of times we'll do the thinking part together, even when it's in one of our two wheelhouses, just because saying it out loud sometimes, to another person lets you better see what you're saying. And sometimes things sound really good until you start explaining. Then you start thinking like, wait, is that really as good as I saw it in my head? And then you go back and you look at it again. And you're like, no, it's not. Or maybe it is.
Yeah.
So a lot of times we will do that part together, the thinking part together. And then the more we're both affected, like the social media manager she was talking about when we went to book her post. She uses the social media manager too. So it's like I could pick like a really high-tech one that is super awesome, but, she can't use.
Yeah. And that's one thing. It's, I think we each have our own roles, but for the most part, we both, I think in all aspects of the business, we could do each other's role if we had to, if you had to do stuff in QuickBooks, I think enough generally about QuickBooks to be able to do it, even though your eye's twitching. But like, I mean, you could, you could pay the bills and you could make sure that works, and that's fine. I know how the editing software works and how Kajabi works, and, so, I mean, the nice thing is like, we have our strengths, we have our roles, but we are also in the position that we could help each other out, and I think that's just so critically important.
I think that's one of those big things that you really need is the ability to, and it might not be so directly. Let's say, you're in the same situation. Maybe you like don't know the editing software, but your spouse does. And you guys are under editing crunch. And you're like, I have no idea what I'm doing. And maybe you even spend 15 minutes and you realize it's going to take him longer to show you how to help with it. Then there's a benefit to doing it and going, okay, at this moment, this doesn't make sense. But how about I help support you in other ways to make sure some of those other things that you're supposed to get done, I can do. Or maybe I can just bring you a drink at the table. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't necessarily have to be the exact activity, but there are other things that could maybe be alleviated. And maybe it's some of the life stuff, right? Like, okay, well, I'll take out the trash cans this week. The same way you do if they're sick.
Yep. And here's the thing. So I think, in closing, I think one thing that is probably one of the most important for us, so we don't fight. We have disagreements, but there's no yelling. There's no swearing. There's no name calling. Because I think we both believe that there is nothing that is so important in life or in business. Now, mind you, we've had a failed business. I've had cancer. We got into a tremendous amount of debt. We have paid that off. We now work together on a daily basis. There is nothing that is so important to disrespect the other person.
Well, I think too is we have enough trust with each other at this point because of having the respect and the roles and responsibilities for long enough, working as a team together for long enough that even if I don't understand how Kristin's coming at something, I know she has the family and the business's best interest in mind. Mm-hmm. And if you don't know if your spouse has your family or your business's best interest together, it's not going to work as a business. Mm-hmm. It might still work as a family. Maybe you could be just business partners, but if you don't trust each other to the level where you know that even if you don't understand where they're coming from, that at least their intentions are good.
Right.
Now, maybe their idea is bad, but at least their intentions are good.
Mm-hmm. But that's, I see couples that they jump to screaming at each other, yelling at each other, disrespecting each other, name calling. And I don't know, maybe it's just because we've lived a lot of life for our age. But like, I've never gotten to the point that like, I'm kind of like, wow, things are, you've done something so heinous that I need to swear at you or call you a name or put you down or, I mean, it's just, I don't get that.
Yeah, I know. And I'd like to be sworn at more. I don't know what I could do to finish that.
But you know what I mean? It's like, because I respect you and I love you and I would never treat you that way, and I don't know. There's part of my brain that there's some things that they just don't make sense to me. And I guess that's one of those things,
Why do people get in relationships that are like that? And why don't they try and work to make them stop being like that? I mean, you're causing yourself pain by being that cruel to your spouse, even if they're a jerk and maybe deserve it at the moment.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So that's the thing. And, sometimes the best thing for a couple is to say, you know what, I can't work in your business anymore, or I can't work with you anymore. And it doesn't mean I don't love you, but I love you so much that I can't work with you anymore. And I've had couples have that conversation that to save their marriage or their relationship, they could not work together.
And ultimately, at the end game is the family has to come first in the scenario. And ultimately, the most important skill you both need to have to work together is the ability to forgive each other.
Yes, absolutely. Because you know what? About 14 times a day, I do something that's kind of silly. 14 times a day, Jeff does something that's kind of silly. And if you just sit there and stew in how angry you are with the other person, don't get us wrong. We get frustrated with each other. We don't always speak the same language, but it never rises to the level that, like I said, like we scream at each other or swear at each other, whatever. Because when you forgive the little things and you don't let the little things drive you crazy, nothing is that bad.
And I also typically question people because I've seen this often where people, they struggle with forgiving their spouse over something. And I'm not talking about like the big stuff. Like, they slept with everyone else in the neighborhood.
That's kind of a big thing.
That would be a big thing, I'm not talking about that kind of stuff. Like the little things like, didn't take the trash out, or, well, when I was sick, they didn't help me, and now they want me to help them when they're sick. And those kind of things do happen. And, even in good relationships, sometimes you don't help someone when you should, and they don't mention it. The thing is, when you get hyper-focused on that, typically I have a feeling you're trying to avoid the fact that you've wronged them. Mm-hmm. And it's easier for you to focus on their failings instead of look at yourself and say, how can I be a better spouse?
Yeah. And so maybe that's the thing, maybe that's the thing that we leave with today is that, if you're one of those people that you get really frustrated and really angry and you're butting heads a lot and you're fighting a lot, ultimately you can't change another person.
No.
Right. And if you believe that at heart they are a good person, then I want you to think about how you can be a better spouse, a better, significant other. How can you be a better member of that relationship?
We talk about this a lot when we talk about task management. You should be picking tasks for things that you can control. I can't control the weather. So I need to be able to pick tasks that aren't making it sunshine. And it works in a relationship too. I can't be a good wife in the marriage because I'm the husband, and I can only control my actions. And vice versa, Kristin can't be me. No one can be me, not even me. It's very difficult.
I think that's probably a good thing. I think one of you is probably enough. But that's the thing. But it's like, I don't think about how I can make Jeff a better husband. I think about how can I be a better wife, and even, we go through phases where, we get in a funk.
Yeah.
But it's funny, but when one of us steps up and tries to be the better version of ourselves, right? Shout out to Clay Shaver. Okay. The other one usually responds and goes, maybe I haven't stepped up my game. And maybe if I step up my game and he's stepping up his game, and it's going to be better. Yeah.
And sometimes, don't get me wrong, Kristen's be like, you know what? Could you take the trash out on Sundays? Do I have to ask you every week? And, for a week or two, I'll do it.
Mm-hmm. You've actually been pretty good at that, though.
Yeah.
So, but, it's not going to be perfect. Forgive your spouse for the things that, are forgivable. And yes, leaving socks on the floor is forgivable, and just think about how you can be better in your business, in your relationships, as a parent every single day. So thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.
This was Small Biz Life.